Hello and welcome to episode 10 of the review and recap series for the Living Under Nazi Rule OCR History B topic. We are carrying on with our fourth theme, which is about Germany during the war between 1939 and 1945. And this lesson we are looking at what wartime opposition was there to Nazi rule. We have previously done a video on opposition to the Nazi government between 1933 and 1939 as part of theme 2. But in this video, we are specifically looking at how and where and in what context opposition to the Nazi government increased during World War II. So it's really important that you distinguish between the two of them, okay? And don't get your dates confused. So let's start off with one of the most infamous examples of wartime opposition to Nazi rule, and that was the July bomb plot of 1944 and the wider operation called Operation Valkyrie. So what was this? It was a plot by a World War II German military officer called Colonel von Stauffenberg to kill Hitler and remove the SS using the reserve army. The reason that Colonel von Stauffenberg decided that he was going to try and plot to kill Hitler and remove the SS is because he had become disillusioned with the German war effort. On a personal level, he had suffered injury in battle. He lost an eye and a hand and some fingers in his campaign in North Africa, and he was increasingly seeing World War II as a disaster not only for the military, but for Germany as a whole. And he decided that the only way that Germany could survive was if it removed Hitler and the SS. So, what did his plan involve? Well, he was going to plant an explosive at a table in the Wolf's Lair, which was the Nazi headquarters. He was going to fix this bomb to a table during a meeting of high-ranking Nazi officials, including Hitler. The bomb was going to explode, it was going to kill Hitler, and then he was going to use the reserve army in Berlin to remove the SS from power. However, the bomb does explode, it detonates, but it's blocked by a table leg. Most of the explosion is absorbed by this huge sort of wooden table leg, which means that it does not kill Hitler. Unfortunately for Stauffenberg, he doesn't realise that until it's too late. As soon as the bomb detonates, he flees to Berlin, only to learn that Hitler is still alive. And as a result, he is arrested and subsequently executed. So although his plot fails, this is very indicative of the increasing levels of extreme opposition that the German government and the Nazi government were facing during World War II. You also get other individuals try and oppose Hitler in less extreme forms, but nevertheless they are important ways of resisting Nazi rule. For example, you get Cardinal Galen, who is quite a powerful Catholic cardinal at the time, and he delivered 3 sermons in 1941, staunchly criticising the Nazis. In these sermons, he focused on the terror of the Gestapo, he focused on the Nazi taking of church property, and of the murder of people with disabilities. So the euthanasia program, or the T4 program, that the Nazis were employing on people with disabilities. As a result of this, the Nazis decide that they are going to clamp down on the priests that are delivering these sermons, and 3 of his fellow priests are murdered as a result of delivering these sermons. Cardinal Galen, because he's quite a powerful figure, survives the ordeal. But again, it shows you another example of religious opposition increasing during wartime for Germany. Another example of a religious individual who opposes the Nazi rule during this time is a man called Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Now, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a Protestant pastor, and he was banned from writing and public speaking because of his criticism of the Nazi government. So what does he do? Well, Bonhoeffer decides he's going to join the Abwehr, which is a military intelligence service branch for the Nazi government. And it's here that he secretly learns and spies on what the Nazis are doing, and he learns about the Nazi atrocities, not only towards the Jewish population in their own country, but also across Europe as well. So Dietrich Bonhoeffer decides he needs to act, and he helps arrange the evacuation of Jewish German people to Switzerland. He arranges for them to escape secretly, and as a result of this, he is arrested for this and he is murdered. So another example of a prominent opponent to the Nazis during World War II. You also get groups resist Nazi rule during this time. One of the most famous groups was a group called the White Rose Movement, or the White Rose Group. And this was a group at Munich University centered around 2 members of the same family, a brother and sister called Hans and Sophie Scholl. So Hans had been influenced by Cardinal Galen and his sermons and his preaching, and Hans had also served time with the German military on the Eastern Front, and it was here as well he had learned of the Nazi atrocities, and he witnessed firsthand the consequences of Nazi rule across Europe. So he and his sister decided they needed to do something. So the group produced anti-Nazi leaflets, and they distributed 5 of these across Munich University. During the 6th distribution of these anti-Nazi leaflets, they were caught by a janitor at Munich University, and they were handed over to the Gestapo in 1943. They are arrested, they're interrogated, during which they admit what they have done, and as a result, they are executed for their crimes. Okay, again, another very significant resistance group who meet the same fate as lots of Nazi opponents, unfortunately, during this time, and they're arrested and executed. You also get an increase in what is known as passive resistance. Now, passive resistance is more like day-to-day, small, minor acts of resistance. So not, for example, helping Jewish people to escape, not plotting to kill Hitler, not delivering sermons. Those are all examples of active resistance increasing. Passive resistance, then, is a smaller scale version. Now, passive resistance is really difficult to measure. We don't know how many people across Germany at this time were passively resisting the Nazis because it took lots of different forms and it wasn't that obvious. For example, saying good morning instead of Heil Hitler was an example of passive resistance. It showed that you were not respecting the Nazi government. But we have no idea how many people did that every day. We just know that it increased during the war. Anti-Nazi jokes were also told. Listening to foreign radio stations, for example, the BBC, was illegal, but that was another form of passive resistance. And hiding Jewish people from the SS and the Gestapo was also another example of passive resistance, rather than actively trying to help them escape Germany. However, it's really important to note that while there were increased examples of active and passive resistance during World War II in Germany, opposition remains, just as it was before, a minority of the German public. The reason for this is most did not know of the Nazi atrocities. If you did not witness firsthand the Nazi atrocities in Poland and Eastern Europe, you might not have the knowledge of that, and therefore that might not be enough of an impetus for you to try and oppose Nazi rule. Another reason that opposition remained a minority amongst the German people is because of the fear of the SS and the Gestapo. Don't forget, since 1933, the Nazis have been cultivating this system of terror in order to crack down on anybody that rears their head against them. And by World War II, this SS and Gestapo system was embedded. People were very aware of the terror system, and they did not want to, obviously, face the consequences of it. Another reason is that Nazi propaganda was highly effective. We again have seen since 1933 how the Nazis adeptly used propaganda to indoctrinate and persuade the German people that the Nazi government is doing the right thing and that they should be supported. And unfortunately, lots of people bought into this. Okay, it was highly effective, and especially during World War II, when propaganda increases and people increasingly, at the start at least, buy into the German war effort. And again, that ties into that last point, okay? During the early stages of the war, so from 1939 to about 1942, the Nazis make significant progress in Europe. The war effort is going relatively well for them. They make lots of ground up very quickly. And this provides a boost of support to Hitler and the Nazis because they can see that people believe that they're winning the war. It's not until from about 1943 onwards, when the tide of the war begins to go against the Germans, that people increasingly start to resist their rule. Okay, so those are some examples of wartime opposition to Nazi rule. Same as ever, I've got a series of questions that I'm going to flash up on the screen now. What I would like you to do is pause the video here for me, please. Have a go at these 5 questions. See what you can remember. If you get any wrong or you've forgotten any, have another go at it and repeat it until you get them right. Okay? Thank you very much for watching. Here are the answers.